Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been, Pablo? Evening, Miles, the CMF tour. Good to see you. How you doing? How you been? How's things, tour? Mike, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Hello, Miles, the CMF Orphan. Good to see you. How you doing? Hey, brother Miles, the CMF Curtis. Good to see you. How you doing? How you been? We still have an issue with Restream regarding the view account. Still not fixed, by the looks of it. But the comment section is working, which is great. Now, by the time everyone tunes in, let's go through essentially what we're going to be talking about tonight's live. Mixture of news to go through as usual. Welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Mouse Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital era. We also do Q&As on this live as well, which means if you ever have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. I'm more than happy to help you out. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're new, if you're regular, let's go CMF. By the way, thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who has so far liked and retweeted this live. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much to everyone for that. And if you haven't liked or retweeted this live and you're watching this on X right now, CMF members, please like and please retweet this live and put a comment outside live if you can. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've liked the live already, thank you so much. If you haven't, just drop a like, CMF members, on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube right now. And also, if you can, drop a comment on YouTube as well. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about the Fed situation with essentially Trump firing a person, which we talked about yesterday, but there's an update on the matter of the Feds. We're also going to go through some news regarding Google apparently entering into the blockchain essentially space, you could say, by creating some sort of way their own ledger. We're going to be talking about essentially another ETF application that's just been essentially pushed through. We're going to talk about MetaPlanet on tonight's live. We're going to go through some European news on tonight's live, how Europe might not be doing so great after all. We're going to talk about the Fed rate cuts on the percentages coming out right now according to studies. We're going to talk about the S&P 500, which is actually having an impact on the crypto market space. We're going to go through some Hong Kong news on tonight's live as well. We're going to talk about the former essentially crypto director Bo Hinnan's new perspective on Bitcoin. We're also going to go through some news regarding Japan's market space and the effects on the crypto market space. We're going to talk about the CFTC on tonight's live as well, changing certain laws for the stock market, which could be the next stage for a tokenization stock market. We're going to talk about Circle essentially and their UDC and their EuroC essentially with MasterCard on tonight's live, and also some other news on tonight's live regarding Ripple as usual. So, but the first news we are going to go through on tonight's live is regarding the Treasury. Before we talk about the Treasury, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go through the first news. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section. We were at here. What's up, Miles? With CMF. Kerry, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles. Good to see you, Messi. How you doing? Evening, Miles, the CMF. Jason, good to see you. How you doing? Let's go, Mike. Hi, Miles. Let's go, Artistic. Good to see you as well. Good evening, Miles and family. Good to see you. Ian, how you doing? Hi there, Miles. Good night. Hi there, Miles. Good night. D, good to see you. So how you doing? Miles, how you doing, man? I'm doing great. How you doing? Is your Restream working now? Yes, Restream is working so far. Comment section is working, but the count is not the viewership count. So it says there's 14 people watching, but there's a lot more than 14 people watching. But for some reason, it's showing some awkward count. I don't know why, I'll be honest. It's not factoring in X's viewership. It's just weirdly factoring some of YouTube's viewership. Very weird. But I'm hoping Restream fixes that issue. But the comment section is working now, which is great. Miles, you're not live on X, just to let you know. Good evening, Miles, and all in CMF. Good evening, Miles and CMF Money. Adi, good to see you as well. Am I not live on X? Evening, Miles. Hope you had a great day. Joe, good to see you. How you doing? Golden Dragon, good to see you. How you doing? Manny, good to see you. How you doing? Good evening, brother Miles and CMF family. Thank you, brother. Good to see you. How you doing? Please like facts. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Bullock, good to see you. How you doing? JP has just said that I'm not live on X. Is everybody having difficulty on X right now watching the live show? Drop a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me if you're watching this on X. What up, Miles and CMF? Ray, good to see you, brother. How you doing? I just liked and retweeted. Thank you so much, Frankie, brother, for that. So I think maybe JP, you might be having an issue with X. Refresh the page. Maybe we'll come back. X works. That's weird. You are on now. Okay, thank you for that, JP. I was a bit worried. I thought we're having issues again with Restream, but it seems like we're back to normal. Okay. Now, the first news on tonight's live is regarding the Treasury Secretary. So, the Treasury Secretary urges the Fed to investigate mortgage fraud claims. Now, we talked about essentially Lisa Cook being essentially fired, let's say, for example, from the Fed, which Trump's administration was behind doing this because she committed some sort of essentially mortgage frauds, which apparently, according to the Fed, they're going to fight this, and Lisa Cook did not essentially do any sort of mortgage fraud that the Trump administration is suggesting. But this isn't just from them. The DOJ also investigated Lisa Cook on essentially the mortgage fraud situation. Scott Benson, U.S. Treasury Secretary, has come out today and called for an internal essentially review of the Federal Reserve over mortgage fraud allegations against Fed Governor Lisa Cook, urging transparency from Chairman Jerome Powell. The call for review raises questions about institutional trust and could impact market stability, particularly affecting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USD-backed stablecoins sensitive to U.S. policy shifts. The Treasury calls for a Fed essentially accountability aimed at fraud allegations. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Benson called for internal reviews of the entire Federal Reserve because of the allegations that are going on right now and because of what the DOJ essentially said. This request highlights essentially the need for transparency within the nation's primary financial regulatory body, such actions to essentially preserve high trust between the Federal Reserve and the public. If sustained, essentially, these allegations could potentially impact the credibility of the Fed governance. The involvement of top officials makes it crucial for the institution to demonstrate accountability and restore confidence. Let's just say Trump asked essentially the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, to do rate cuts after and after again. Back to back, Trump has been requesting the Fed to do rate cuts, telling Jerome Powell that he needs to be doing rate cuts. And since Jerome Powell decided not to listen to Trump and thinks that he has some sort of power over the United States, or essentially the president of the United States, Trump's essentially administration, the DOJ, the secretary, have all decided to make essentially the Fed is crumbling right now because they couldn't be bothered to do rate cuts because that's how much they hate Trump. So instead, the Trump administration, the DOJ, and the secretary is picking them one by one. And now they're going to be doing an internal review of the entire Fed because of this mortgage allegation. And if it turns out to be true that a member of the Fed is actually committing fraud, the Fed that's supposed to be set at a very high standard above everybody else, transparency, working for the little guy, and so on, is what they technically describe it as. And if they're seeing that their members are actually committing fraud, then it's going to crumble. The Fed will crumble from within. And all Jerome Powell had to do was do rate cuts, but he decided to not do rate cuts and anger Trump as much as he can, which has now led to the Fed being investigated. And if it turns out there are more fraud allegations, not just Lisa Cook essentially committing mortgage essentially fraud, but there are more essentially fraud situations regarding Fed members, then the Fed will essentially crumble from within because the credibility will completely go away. Market reactions reflect increased volatility as major players like essentially Bitcoin and Ethereum respond to these regulatory news. Treasury Secretary Benson calls might further influence the Federal Reserve's policy direction, with experts suggesting that transparency is paramount at this juncture. The absence of a direct statement from Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook leaves industry observers watching closely for further developments. The consequences of regulatory scrutiny suggesting essentially this could lead to cautious market behavior affecting short-term essentially capital flows, and historical patterns suggest ongoing essentially reviews could influence broader financial markets as stakeholders Closely monitor developments. If the Fed crumbles, even better, to be fairly honest. Don't worry, the dollar's not going to go to zero. Some people might be worried, some might not be worried, but as long as stable coins are there, stable coins are backed essentially by US bonds and fiat, so dollars is not going to go to zero. But the Fed's credibility is pretty much into the toilet, let's just say, at this point. Now, Google is what we're going to talk about next. And that news is pretty much very bullish for the crypto space, as the Fed is just crumbling from within with fraud allegations. It's absolutely amazing to watch. Google is what we're going to talk about next. But before we talk about Google on tonight's live, let's go through the comment section. As I said previously, this is essentially live, which means if you do have any questions or statements, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's go to the comment section first, and then we'll straight into the next news. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section. Yes, you are live on X. You're fine on X. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much, BullXOB. I prefer YouTube. No problem, Frankie Brother. Morning, Miles, the CMF. Shelly, good to see you all morning. How you doing, Shelly? How you been? I just checked. You're not live on X. God bless you. Johnny, let's go. Hi, Miles. Back on track now, listening as usual. Let's go. You're live on X, Miles. So I'm live on X for some people, not live on X for other people. It's a bit weird. Evening, Miles and family. Susie, good to see you. How you doing? Hello, Miles, the CMF members. I hope that everyone had a great day. Scott, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? Sorry, it was something on my end that was the problem on X. No problem, JP. What up, Miles and CMF? Christopher, good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles, just joined. Have I missed anything? T, perfect timing. We just only went for the first news regarding the Fed being investigated. Christopher, let's go. How you doing? The executive branch should have the highest morals, Miles, and that is never mentioned. It is often blamed on others being vindictive. From what you said, that is what is going on here. Forgiveness. Let's go XRP. Let's go Scott. Now, Google. It seems like share the live facts. Once again, if you've liked or retweeted this live on X, if you're watching this on X, thank you so much, CMF members. If you've essentially watching this on YouTube right now and you've liked the live, thank you so much. If you haven't, like and retweet this live. Best show on YouTube. Let's go, Christopher. Now, Google. Seems like they want to enter into the blockchain space. I'll be very honest. Google right now is in some sort of a way dominating the AI space, you could say, through smartphones right now, because there's even rumors going around that Apple might be partnering up with Google because Google's Gemini, essentially AI, software essentially is top of the range for any smartphone to have. So Google is right now dominating an AI space when it comes to smartphones, and it seems like they want to enter into the blockchain space, and they want to create a universal ledger blockchain, a cloud universal ledger for blockchain. So here it is. Google Cloud, headed by Rich, has announced the Google Cloud Universal Ledger, a layer 1 blockchain project currently in pilot with CME Group. The initiative, aimed at institutional payment infrastructures, may alter settlement practices and boost Python-based smart contracts usage in financial systems. Google Cloud has announced plans for a new layer 1 blockchain, a universal ledger, highlighting the potential to serve as a neutral infrastructure for institutional payments. Rich, the head of Web3 strategies leading the initiative, Rich has emphasized that the GCUL will support Python-based smart contracts and serve as a neutral infrastructure that any financial institution can utilize. Rich also strategy focuses on Python-based smart contracts, enabling accessible developments for financial institutions. The CME Group, a key partner, completed initial tries and plans broader, essentially, participant involvements by 2025, coming to an end. The blockchain pilot has essentially had some sort of interest from various financial sectors, promising more efficient payment and asset settlements. Rich also essentially ensures that this project serves as a neutral base promoting institutional adoption. Positioned as a regulatory compliant, the new blockchain infrastructure by Google Cloud aims to see entry barriers for institutions. Without a dedicated token, it focuses on broad accountability and impartiality in financial services. So Google is, because there's a lot of people that might be sharing this news and sharing misinformation with it or exaggerating it too much. I've seen news articles exaggerate this very news by suggesting that Google was coming for the entire industry inside the crypto sector. They're going to dominate the financial sector and blow everything out of the water inside the financial sector, which is completely false. So Google is actually coming in on a neutral play. They're not going to be creating a token, but just an infrastructure where tokens can be used within it for essentially institutional payments, which Google's probably doing this because of Google Pay, for example, the same way that we have Apple Pay. So no, Google is not creating their own tokens. No, they're not coming in to blow everything out of the water. They just want to join the party and create some sort of a universal ledger where multiple tokens can be accepted through a payment system. So because I've seen a lot of people essentially share this news or read this news out on their own pages, and as always, I don't know what it is, some influencers like to exaggerate news too much. But no, this isn't Google trying to take over the financial sector or essentially blow every crypto out of the waters. They're actually just coming in to create an infrastructure that's like a multi-token essentially infrastructure that payments can process through. And they're not creating their own token. So they're not going to be competing with XRP or XLM or XDC or HBAR or Cardano or Solana in terms of payments. They're actually just creating a platform for those tokens that essentially possibly that could be accepted through it. That's all they're doing. Now, Bitwise is what we talk about next. So moving off Google news, but impressive that Google wants to join the blockchain space. Incredible. Moving on from Google news to Bitwise is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Before essentially we talk about Bitwise on tonight's live, let's one more time, let's go inside the comment section. As usual, as I said, if you do have any questions or comments, put it outside the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So before we go through Bitwise's news, let's go through the comment section again. Hello, engineer. Jaffer, how you doing? They should use XRP Ledger is what Messi says. I agree. I mean, if Google wants to be dominating the payment infrastructure section, they should just be using the XRP Ledger. It's 10 times better than coming up with their own. Hey, Miles, Curtis, good to see you. So how you doing? Polygon says, ITO built for AI agents and World Economic Forum, plugin, PLI, Next Chainlink, Arizo, ZKL1, XEC, eCash, Casta, Algo, XDC, Tectonic from Kronos. Interesting. I'm guessing that's the projects that you're holding in portfolio. Some good, some speculative, I would have to say. Now, Bitwise. Bitwise files for the first ever US spot Chainlink ETF with Coinbase as the custodian. According to the latest reports, asset manager Bitwise has filed in for an S1 with the US SEC, essentially with the US SEC, to bring spot Chainlink ETF to the US markets. If approved, this would be the first ever spot Chainlink ETF. That's custodian essentially by Coinbase through Bitwise, and essentially is Bitwise's only Chainlink ETF. The proposed fund, called the Bitwise Chainlink ETF, would hold Link tokens directly in custody, tracking the CME essentially of the Chainlink dollar reference rate. Coins would be stored by Coinbase Custody Trust Company, and trade execution would be managed by Coinbase Prime. This spot Chainlink ETF has a streamlined design with no staking or complex structures, which is expected to speed up regulatory approvals compared to other altcoin link proposals. So no staking whatsoever features on this Chainlink ETF, unlike the Solana essentially ETF that's trying to get staking capabilities, or Ethereum refiling for those scenarios. Chainlink is one of the top tokens by market cap, and essentially plays a foundational role in decentralized finance through core services to blockchains like Ethereum. Demand has been growing from both developers and institutions, driven by partnerships and on-chain infrastructure adoption. The spot Chainlink ETF could be more familiar and regulated, essentially way for investors to get exposure to this asset. With institutions leaning towards ETFs, this product could be a bridge between crypto infrastructure and traditional portfolios. Link's price popped up about 5% from the inch-world essentially lows that are sitting at right now following the filing coming out. However, despite the bounce, technicals suggest lingering bearish presence in the broader market volatility that's going on right now. Approval is still uncertain, and other altcoin filings like Solana, Dogecoin, XRP, and Near are still essentially going through their own process. Bitwise has been a pioneer in crypto ETFs, having launched essentially spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs with combined essentially AUM in the billions, assets under management essentially. Now, the the SEC's previous setbacks, like essentially pausing Bitwise's BITW fund shortly after approval, show the regulatory environment is still moving a bit cautious. The reversal showed essentially internal uncertainties within the commission and evolving standards. Based on the latest research, Bitwise is filing for a first Bitwise Chainlink ETF as a step towards exposure to core essentially protocol infrastructure by creating a clean swap-based structure with custody and defined pricing. And the fund could be a gateway essentially for institutional investors to get into decentralized or coral networks through regulated chains. So this is great news for anybody that is holding Chainlink, that Bitwise has decided to create a very basic, essentially, ETF for it. No staking capabilities, no nothing capabilities, just the ETF itself, which they're hoping should process it faster for the SEC, because they're not applying for anything special. Just a basic ETF is all they want for Chainlink. To be fair, there are other tokens that also have a basic ETF just going through. The only one that actually is trying to get staking capabilities is only Solana, to be fairly honest. Now, Metaplanet is what we talk about next. The Japanese company that's known as the MicroStrategy of Japan has decided to purchase more Bitcoins and raise more money to purchase more Bitcoins. Metaplanet issues shares to bolster Bitcoin treasury. Metaplanet, a Japanese listed company, now plans to raise approximately 130.334 billion yen by issuing new shares internationally, primarily to enhance its Bitcoin holdings. Metaplanet is going international to raise money to purchase more Bitcoins. This move underscores Bitcoin's increasing role as a corporate reserve asset, potentially influencing market dynamics and essentially attracting attention from institutional investors worldwide. Metaplanet has essentially announced its plans to raise funds to enhance its Bitcoin treasury by issuing new shares worth approximately $130.3 billion. CEO Simon stated this step aligns with the street goal of establishing Metaplanet as the leading Bitcoin treasury entity in Japan. Metaplanet's board approved the capital raising initiative with the intent to purchase 123.81 essentially billion yen, which is roughly about $837 million in Bitcoin. The remainder will support Bitcoin's financial operations, anticipated to offer stable returns through option sales strategies. Market reactions have been notably positive. As a result of this move, Metaplanet gained inclusion in the FTSE Japan Index. CEO Simon expressed confidence on X, mentioning that this milestone as a significant for Metaplanet's journey in becoming a major Bitcoin treasury firm, not just in Japan, but aiming for a worldwide scenario. Metaplanet's strategy essentially is poised to bolster Bitcoin's perception as a viable corporate treasury asset, potentially increasing institutional interest, and regulatory landscapes may shift, influencing future adoption and the broader acceptance of cryptocurrency reserves. So, Metaplanet has decided to invest another $800 million plus into Bitcoin. They're raising the money as we speak, let's just say. They are definitely aiming to compete with the bigger boys inside, essentially, the bigger whales, you could say, inside the Bitcoin space in terms of corporations on the public market. This is brilliant news for Bitcoin, to be fairly honest. Good news for the crypto space in general, adds more credibility. Now, Europe is what we're going to talk about next. And it seems like Europe is not doing too well. Now, Europe has been talking a very big game for themselves. You know, first, Europe started out with trying to go against Trump, having a debate with Trump regarding tariffs, saying Europe is going to be standing strong, Europe's economy is strong, and so on. Which I've said for the longest time, Europe's economy is not that strong. It's actually crumbling from within. Certain European countries are doing horrendous, to be fairly honest, on many different issues. It could be essentially economically, or it could be the immigration situation, but it's doing horrendous in every aspect, to be fairly honest. And Europe has essentially decided, you know, after going head-to-head with Trump, which backfired completely, and Europe ended up having actually an agreement with Trump, losing and waving a white flag, then Europe deciding that America is weak right now and that we could create our own stablecoin to compete with the US dollar stablecoin like USDT and USDC and so on, which again backfired. Nobody wants to use some sort of European stablecoin by the looks of it. Some people do, of course, and some institutions do, but the majority of people in Europe want to still use the US dollars, believe it or not. Even though some people might say the US dollars is weak and essentially toilet paper money has no value whatsoever, but even in a digital world, people still prefer to use digital dollars than euros on a worldwide basis scenario. So Europe is, well, this is what the update is just coming from Europe right now. Europe is in ruins. Why the European Central Bank won't save it this time. It's not just essentially France that is struggling right now. The whole of Europe is going through a systematic crisis, and the European Central Bank printing press can no longer solve this issue. Despite years of massive injections, the Eurozone is sinking into a vicious essentially circle of stagnation and unsustainable debt. It seems that this time, unlike 2008 scenario, the European Central Bank can no longer save Europe from a crash. So Europe could be heading towards an economic crash is what's being suggested right now. It's an outcome to consider, not the main outcome. Statistics from the European Central Bank reveal the magnitude of the disaster in Europe. In June 2025, the empty money supply of the Eurozone reached 15 essentially trillion euros, up 2.7% from the previous year. This massive money creation, however, generates no significant economic growth for Europe. Even though Europe is rapidly printing essentially euros right now, it's still not helping their situation, just making it 10 times worse. This catastrophic performance contrasts with US results, where 4.5% of their monetary growth produce at least 2.5% growth. Europe demonstrates the total inefficiency in expansionary monetary policies. Each euro created by the European Central Bank produces less real wealth than any other developed country. Europe becomes the global laboratory of essentially monetary failure. Europe perfectly illustrates the absence of a essentially multiplier effect between monetary creation and economic growth. Liquidity injected by the European Central Bank can no longer facilitate investment. On the contrary, it feeds an increasingly parasitic, essentially European bureaucratic system. This creation creates a crowding out mechanism Europe essentially states, financed by the European Central Bank board purchases, and absorbs most of their new liquidity. The European private sector is deprived of access to the credit it needs for development. Moreover, this phenomenon causes the progressive, essentially, zombification of European economies. The least productive companies survive thanks to artificially low European, essentially, rates. At the same time, innovative companies struggle to obtain financing in Europe right now because Europe in general is not doing too well. Thus, Europe artificially maintains obsolete economic structures at the expense of innovation. The European Central Bank has betrayed its fundamental mission of price stability. It now prioritizes the financing of European sovereign debt over the fight against inflation. This drift turns the European Central Bank into a disguised fiscal policy instrument for the entire continent. Remember what I said, essentially, that a long time ago when it was voting season, if everybody remembers, I was talking about when the time period was when Trump and Kamala Harris were going head to head on who becomes the president of the United States, the next president of the United States. And I said, essentially, every country right now is very close on having some sort of an economic breakdown, is what I pretty much said. And I said that some countries will either go into a scenario where essentially, they can have a recession period, or they can just pretty much skim past it. And I said if Kamala Harris became president, then we're definitely going into a recession in the United States because she will 100% crash the economy. And I said if Trump becomes president, then we can just pretty much skim essentially a recession in the biggest market space in the world, which affects the rest of the market spaces around the world. As the International Monetary Fund puts it, if the American markets sneeze, the world market catches a cold. And I know most people say, who cares about the US? But you should. If you're in a market space, if you're in the financial sector, if you're in the crypto sector, the US market space matters more than you think to anything else. But here's the thing. Europe doesn't seem like it's going to be skimming past its recession scenario or an economic collapse. It almost seems like that Europe is heading towards an economic collapse if it doesn't fix itself up quickly. If it starts essentially, what Europe needs to do is invest back into its own countries. For some oddly reason, Europe has decided to fund and cater towards more on the side of immigration in Europe and also on foreign wars than within themselves. Multiple factories essentially in Germany are closing down and moving overseas. France has one of the worst real estate market spaces ever seen before. There's about 12,000 real estate agencies, essentially small, medium, closed down in France because of their horrendous real estate market space. And Germany, France, Spain, and Italy are pretty much that's holding essentially Europe together. No other country in Europe is providing some sort of major resources or services that's funding the European zone. It's pretty much Germany, France, and Italy and Spain that's holding Europe together, to be fairly honest. And they're all doing terrible because they're so focused on things that don't matter. The reason why Trump was able to save the United States is because Trump put the United States first, which is what somebody should be doing if they're chosen to lead a country. Unfortunately, European leaders have decided to cater to other people rather than their own countries. They should honestly learn from Trump, to be fairly honest. Because recent economic history shows the failure of this approach that's going on right now in Europe. Between 1970 and 2011, despite the global dominance of the central banks, 147 banking crises shook the global economy. These data prove that the central banks do not prevent financial crises, they often delay and amplify them, which is facts. Even in 2008, a lot of banks knew they were about to go essentially under, pretty much, you could say, but they just extended it as much as they could. The European Central Bank exactly reproduces this dangerous pattern of the Europeans at the European scale. By artificially maintaining the solvency of member states through massive bond purchases, it delays necessary structural adjustments. This policy encourages generalized fiscal irresponsibility and worsens the structural imbalance of European economies. Europe has essentially trapped itself in a monetary dependency trap from which it can no longer escape from. The European economies, with their massive public debts, and depend entirely on the European Central Bank refinancing to avoid collapse. This dependency creates a vicious circle. The more the European Central Bank finances European debts, the more states can essentially afford unproductive spending. European economies gradually lose their capacity to essentially generate any sort of growth. They become chronic patients on permanent monetary drips. The record global public debt of $102 trillion in 2024 illustrates this widespread drift. However, Europe is among the most worsened cases in the world right now. Indeed, the continent no longer generates enough wealth to adjust its astronomical levels of debt. Only in the continuous monetary creation by the European Central Bank maintains the illusion of its solvency. Europe demonstrates a definitive failure of large-scale quantitative easing. The continental bankruptcy disguised by the European Central Bank can no longer mask the collapse of the European economies. Sooner or later, the continent will have to face the truth, which is that Europe is in a terrible state and is crumbling from within if the leaders of Europe don't do something fast. Their best case scenario would be to move into digital assets like this to get access to liquidity. Remember also when a lot of people said it might take a lot of time, people assumed years ago, people assumed by 2013 and so on is when we go into the crypto section and crypto world and, governments slowly adapting to essentially to cryptocurrencies. And I said things will move a lot more quicker because they have no choice, because banks, institutions, governments have no choice. And that is why they'll go towards digital assets faster. It's because of liquidity. Banks, institutions, and governments need liquidity, and Europe needs liquidity badly. Otherwise, it's going to be crumbling from within. And to be fair, the European leaders are making some stupid decisions, to be fairly honest, that add more to the debt situation. I'll give you an example. Hungary decided to not help Ukraine. Hungary was asked by Europe to essentially invest into the pot of money that's going to be sent to Ukraine to battle against Russia. And they said no. They rejected it. The European zone essentially, you could say, fined essentially Hungary and said essentially, they fined Hungary for not investing into a foreign war, which is stupid and extremely moronic. How are you penalizing your own members because they don't want to fund a war in a foreign country, which is Ukraine versus Russia, which Ukraine is not even a European, essentially not under the EU. But Hungary essentially got penalized for not essentially investing into that war. So to be fair, European leaders themselves are doing this to themselves as well, to be fairly honest. They're crashing their own economy on purpose. The same way a long time ago, the Biden administration was, for some oddly reason, damaging the American economy on purpose, as if they hated the US, but they were in charge of the US. Same scenario is happening in Europe. The European leaders are on purpose destroying the European economy, genuinely on purpose destroying it from within. And then America chose Trump, which saved the US economy, actually. The amounts of billions of dollars that entered the US markets because of Trump, that were exiting because of the Biden administration before. Sorry about that. But for some reason, Europe is adding essentially to their own situation. They're on purposely crashing their own economies without even realizing it, you could even say. But all the best to Europe. One of the outcomes on the table right now is that if Europe doesn't fix up ASAP, it's going to crumble from within, which is going to crash their economy. The best option right now would be to get access to the digital economy fast. Europe needs liquidity fast right now. They need liquidity extremely bad. And the easiest way they can get liquidity, digital market space, by connecting to the blockchain space. Crypto provides liquidity. Easiest way to put it. Now, before we talk about the next news on tonight's live, which is regarding the Fed rate cuts, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go straight into the next news. But yeah, honestly, America was so lucky to just escape an economic crisis, major catastrophic crash, which the Chinese government would have loved to see America crash. But Trump came in and saved the day. As much as some news channels will tell you Trump hasn't done anything for the United States, or essentially, news in general, but he has. Trump has done so much for the United States that he doesn't get the respect that he needs, to be fairly honest. He's the only man that's actually put in work. Sure, he's no angel, but who is, to be fairly honest? Nobody can point to anybody and say, that person is perfect, because nobody's perfect in this world. Everybody's done something wrong in their essentially past life. Everyone's done something, and Trump is no angel like the next person, but at least he's done some positive for the American people. Let's just be honest with ourselves. He's done a lot of positiveness for the crypto space. He's done a lot of positiveness on essentially protecting American citizens, closing their borders. He's done so much for the American citizens that he doesn't get the respect he deserves, to be fairly honest. And again, I'm not saying he's some sort of an angel, because nobody is. Nobody's perfect. But at least this man is trying. That's saying a lot, coming, as a politician, essentially. People saying he's a politician or someone. And now people are calling Trump a dictator because he's willing to save American lives. Somehow he's a dictator now. Very odd. The level of brainwashing you would have to go to call someone a dictator who's trying to make sure you're safe at night walking home is crazy. Hi, Miles and CMF family. Good to see you guys. Let's go for Facts News. Con, let's go. Good to see you. How you doing? Hi, Miles and CMF. Good to see you, Stormy. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF. How you doing today, boss? I'm doing great, Carlos. Good to see you as well. Let's go. Miles, can you give a correct ticker and logo for MetaPlanet, please? Mav, drop that comment outside the live show on YouTube, and I'll just reply back to your comment with the ticker. No problem. Fiat is in its final days now, Miles. By the looks of it, looks like it. Ian, I'll be honest. Miles is that news was accurate that UK wants to join the EU again. There's rumors going around that the UK wants to join the EU again, which again would be stupid. But I mean, at this point, UK is not doing too great either, to be fairly honest. The EU sure is crumbling from within, but so is the UK, to be fairly honest. The EU is actually crumbling a lot more quicker than it may seem compared to the UK. Wow, that will be interesting. Facts. Let's go, Scott. Maybe Europe should stop funding wars and buying arms from US on full price and sending money to Zelensky. I agree 100%, my brother. Let's go, Ian, or Facts. Let's go, Ray. Carlos, thank you so much for the $10 donation, brother. Absolutely amazing. Going straight to that hedge fund. Thank you so much, CMF hedge fund. Incredible. Miles, why don't these world leaders learn a few lessons from Trump? because those world leaders are being controlled, and Trump is difficult to control for the certain families that essentially rule the world. Let's just say Europe is lost. EU is molded after the Soviet model. No money gonna fix that. I'll be honest. Move to the US, Miles. It is a better place than the UK. I'll be very honest. America is a better country, essentially to live in than the United Kingdom. I would have to say 100%. With Trump leading America, 1,000,000,000%, America is a better place to live than the United Kingdom or even the EU put together. The EU and the UK have so much potential, huge potential. The UK has huge potential. The EU has huge potential, but unfortunately, they're just being stupid by making stupid decisions. Trump, on the other hand, is making brilliant decisions for the United States. He's keeping their country safe, closing their borders, and also injecting liquidity into the US market space. On the other hand, Europe and UK are doing the exact opposite. Brainwashing is a hell of a drug. Facts, right? Absolutely. Trump is naive to think that he can do something with Russians. Well, he can at least try, can't he? Hi, Miles and CMF family. Hope everyone is doing well. Ronnie, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? The world is a weird place, isn't it? Yep. These governments have all the money in the world and they spend it on the stupidest ideas. I agree. My opinion for way EU support Ukraine is because it is alien with UK, and for UK the war is huge purpose. Yeah, the EU has essentially they're ranking number 2 in gas. Ukraine is ranking number 2 in gas. In terms of energy, Ukraine is a hotspot. There's also other scenarios in Ukraine, which I'm not going to be talking about on this live. But there are also other things that have happened in Ukraine and maybe continue happening in Ukraine, where they'll do experiments on certain people. It's a research study paper that was done, which I'm not going to talk about it because it's something that shouldn't be discussed online, let's just say. But yeah, there was some research study papers out of Ukraine suggesting certain things were happening. Now, Fed rate cuts is what we're going to talk about next. UK is better off on its own, I agree. Knowing Russians, they know how to manipulate. I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Fed rate cut, essentially the Fed rate cut odds are right now reaching 85% for a September decision. So, as I said, we could be seeing rate cuts in September. Jerome Powell maybe comes to his senses and realize a rate cut is actually a good idea, or he gets pressured into a rate cut because the Fed is right now being investigated by the DOJ and essentially the secretary, or Jerome Powell decides to go into September and not do a rate cut, which will impact the crypto market space for 24 hours or 48 hours max negatively. Don't worry, at the end of essentially September, we're going to be having the Clarity Act. The Federal Reserve under Chairman Jerome Powell signals an 80 to 95% probability of an interest rate cut in September 2025 due to declining inflation and slow job growth. The anticipated rate cut could lead to a lower borrowing cost, affecting essentially equities, commodities, and potentially enhancing cryptocurrency market performance by increasing liquidity and risk appetite. The recent surge in odds for Federal Reserve interest rate cut in September 2025 is notable, with predictions reaching 80 to 95%. This move reflects a cooling inflation, slowing job growth, and revised GDP forecast. Under Chairman Jerome Powell, remarks highlight potential policy adjustments. Jerome Powell stated inflation had moved much closer to our objective, and the labor market had cooled from its formerly overheated state. Essentially, key changes hinge on economic indicators and regulatory shifts. The expected rate cuts could significantly influence borrowing costs and the global markets as well. A reduction in rates also essentially often leads to lower borrowing costs, inversely affecting currency valuations and boosting risk assets, including cryptocurrencies and equities. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, XLM, XDC, and the list goes on. HBAR, Cardano gained from this anticipated monetary easing. Historical trends indicate that positive reactions in the cryptocurrency sector to dovish stances, which bolster liquidity and increase in risk-taking behavior among investors. Market anticipates of rate adjustments have been reinforced by future trading platforms, signaling a strong belief upcoming changes. This aligns with the economic indicators showing diminished inflation risk and noted by Jerome Powell. The potential financial, regulatory, and technological outcomes of such monetary policy shifts are considerable. Increased liquidity could spur essentially growth in DeFi protocols like Curve and Lido Finance, reflecting historical trends and post essentially dovish pivots back in 2019 and 20 essentially as well. But the main point of it is right now, it stands at 85% to 95% chance of a rate cut happening as of now in September, which is brilliant news. But again, as I said, keep both outcomes on the table. Be a possibility of a rate cut, and also maybe Jerome Powell just decides to go back on his words, because he technically didn't say we're going to do a rate cut. He said we're having some changes in the policy terms. Now, S&P 500 is what we're going to talk about next. The S&P 500 reaches record highs, and the crypto markets are reacting right now to that news. The S&P 500 index hit an all-time high of 6,486.95 before slightly retreating, essentially, marking a continuation of 2025's record-breaking, essentially, equity rally. Though linked essentially to traditional markets, this rally indirectly affects cryptocurrencies, shaping institutional sentiment and potential investment flows without immediate measurable on-chain impacts. The S&P 500 index achieved a new record peak of 6,486.95, marking significant rise in equity markets. The achievement aligns with sustained rallies within traditional financial sectors, driven by factors such as asset allocation from major players like BlackRock and Vanguard. Indirect implications for cryptocurrencies are evident, yet no direct shifts essentially in the main assets and crypto assets. Broader market risk appetite could lead to increased interest rates in digital assets. Also, Arthur Hayes, the co-founder of BitMEX, also weighed in on the matter and said, equity all-time highs or risk-on signals. Don't sleep on how fast flows can essentially rotate towards digital assets when the music stops in TradFi. Market essentially symptoms between equities and crypto continues. Analysts point to potential uptakes in Bitcoin and Ethereum correlated with overall market confidence, although on-chain data essentially does not yet indicate major shifts. So, S&P 500 is actually again doing some sort of record breaking, which is having positive effects on the crypto space here and there. Let's just be honest with ourselves, which is brilliant to see, because so far Bitcoin does still tend to follow the S&P 500. Does tend to follow tech stocks. The faster we get regulations, the faster we can decouple from Bitcoin's footsteps of sometimes following the stock market and sometimes not. Now, Hong Kong is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Hong Kong company accepts Bitcoin for shares. Interest in cryptocurrencies within the Asian market is essentially seeing remarkable growth, with Bitcoin stabilizing at $112,000 and approaching the significance of $112,500 mark. Optimism surrounding both Bitcoin and altcoins is again on the accent. Recently, a major announcement revealed a groundbreaking move by Hong Kong company opting for transact in Bitcoin instead of traditional currencies. CIMG Inc., owner of renowned brands like Candigo and McNoe, has officially announced its decisions to sell company shares in exchange for Bitcoin in Hong Kong. This innovative transaction, involving 9 investors essentially situated outside the United States, allows the purchase of shares valued at $55 million for 500 Bitcoins. Each share is priced at 0.25 cents, but the total purchase will be made using 500 Bitcoins at the rate of $110,000 per unit. Whether the decision to create a Bitcoin treasury or opting for this payment method instead of using dollars or yuan is more intriguing remains a subject of speculation for the time being. The trend of holding Bitcoin reserves is led by US-based company MicroStrategy, who's processing over 632,457 Bitcoins as the title for this article. The board essentially believes investing in Bitcoin offers a unique exposure to crypto assets and new technologies beyond traditional businesses and investment models aimed at macroeconomic uncertainties. This strict venture places CIMG at the forefront of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency innovation. Official CIMG statements collectively entities like essentially ETFs and DeFi contracts, government-held assets, and public company reserves currently hold more than 3.68 million BTC, given Bitcoin's cap supply of 21 million essentially tokens. This current situation points towards an immediate scarcity. This move by Hong Kong-based firm to embrace Bitcoin payments underscores a major shift in global financial strategies. It signals a growing trust in cryptocurrencies as an alternative to traditional fiat exchanges, highlighting a pivotal moment in the business world's approach to asset management. First company in Hong Kong, or in the world, you could pretty much say, selling their company shares for Bitcoin, not dollars or yuan, but for Bitcoin. It's an interesting, essentially, concept that essentially this company decided to take on upon themselves. Now, the next news we're going to go through on tonight's live is regarding Bo Hinnins, who used to be the former, essentially, director in the White House regarding cryptocurrencies. Before we talk about Bo Hinnins, let's go inside the comment section. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, put it outside the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's go through the comment section once again. Let's see where we were at. As I said previously, I go through everyone's comments. I don't miss out on any questions. If you've taken time out of your day to write a question or make a statement, I'm going to read it out. We just need proper leadership, is what Ian said. I agree. Get Miles to go into politics. Get Miles to go into politics. If I went into politics, every politician pretty much will be arrested. Every senator, judge, congressman, congresswoman, everybody will be investigated. Honestly, if I ever became a president or a prime minister, let's just say, as a scenario, if I ever became a president or a prime minister of a country, the number one thing I will do before reducing taxes, before stopping immigration, before stopping foreign wars, the number one thing I will do is get to the root cause of the problem, which is the politicians. I would immediately investigate every single politician, every single judge, every single Supreme Judge, because I'll guarantee you I can stop the bleeding of money just by investigating those politicians. If I investigate every single politician, every single judge, Supreme Judge, senator, governor, everybody, I'll guarantee you I'll stop the bleeding of money, because it's those people that are doing the spending. So if I investigate them, I can stop the bleeding and put them in prison. Before I stop immigration or stop inflation or stop any other thing, that's the number one act I will do. Investigate every single politician around me, every single judge around me, every single Supreme Judge around me, every single mayor around me. Everybody will be under investigation. And if I find anything, even a smudge of essentially fraud, one, I'll stop the bleeding of money, and two, that person is going to prison for life. And I'm not even joking. I will put them in prison for life, depending on what they did, depending on how much money they spent. Some will go for 25 years, and some will go for life with no parole. Because if you are stealing as a politician, you are stealing from tax-paying working people, which is wrong. Those people chose you to help them have a better life, and instead you decide to abuse them and destroy the middle class. So you deserve to be in prison for life. But that's what I would do if I was president or prime minister of a country. So you can tell I will never become a president or prime minister of a country, because, you know, the people will choose me, but I guarantee I won't make it to the podium. Now, because of what I will be doing. So I won't, you know, because I'm going to be investigating everybody, I won't make it. I don't think the leader can do anything in the UK to make it better as it is possible, Miles. I agree. I just want to make money, my money, and leave. I agree. He's too honest to be a politician. Me? Mike, have you noticed the flags all over the place? Miles, have you noticed the flags all over the place in the UK? I have. Sometimes people need to hear the truth. Miles is a good candidate. Thank you so much for that, funky brother. Why wait? I lied. Why wait till September? Why can't he do rates today? Because it has to go with the dates. He can do if he wants to. If the market is in a horrendous position, he can, as the Fed chairman, do an emergency meeting. Miles, has been so long. We have not heard from Bilal. I pray that he's okay as we go back from TikTok days. That's true. The last thing I heard about Bilal, he was in football camp, if I'm not mistaken. I hope he's doing great. I'm not allowed to buy crypto outright, and savings only allowed to invest profit in crypto. Let's go. Okay, what else? As most of these world politicians and judges should be arrested for corruption, though, bro. Facts. Let's go, right? Absolutely. Run for President Miles. I will cast the first vote. Let's go, Scott. Now, former White House crypto director Bo Hennings has come out and decided to say something positive regarding Bitcoin. Since the last time Bitcoin was discussed by the White House on the news, it was when Scott Benson said essentially America is not going to be investing in the Bitcoin, and instead is going to be using seized assets going forward. And then he got a lot of backlash from Bitcoin maxis, which prompted him to tweeting, "We're looking for alternative methods," but he didn't say that on live news. So Bo Hennings decided to come out of his retirement, let's just say, as the White House director to come and reassure people regarding Bitcoin's footsteps. Former White House crypto director Bo Hennings, currently serving as a strategic advisor at Tether, stated in an interview that he is very confident in that the United States government will intact the Bitcoin Reserve Act before the end of 2025. Bo Hennings stated that the US government is still interested in accumulating more Bitcoins, though budget-neutral ways. The young, accomplished crypto leader highlighted that President Donald Trump remains essentially a steadfast in welcoming essentially innovation to the United States. According to Bo Hennings, David Sachs, the White House crypto Caesar, is working closely with lawmakers led by Senator Cynthia Luminis to pass the Bitcoin Act before the end of 2025. Earlier this month, the US Treasury Secretary Scott Benson announced that the Trump administration is seeking budget-neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoins. Benson clarified that the US government holds Bitcoin valued at between $15 billion and $20 billion. At the state level, several US states have progressed to essentially implement their respective strategic essentially Bitcoin reserves. For example, New Hampshire became the first state to authorize its treasury to invest up to 5% of their public funds in the Bitcoin. Several other states led by Texas have also been pushing to implement strict Bitcoin reserves. Other American states are also pushing for a basket of cryptocurrencies for reserves, which is a better idea. The Philippines lawmakers essentially also introduced a bill to essentially establish a strict Bitcoin reserve. Notably, the Philippines lawmakers plan to direct the country's central banks to purchase 2,000 Bitcoins per year for the next 5 years. Meanwhile, several countries have already purchased Bitcoins, including El Salvador, Bhutan, and Ukraine. The imminent adoption of Bitcoin by the United States will likely influence other countries to follow in suit. If the United States does essentially, invest into Bitcoin with their own funds, then obviously, yes, it's going to prompt other countries to jump on the bandwagon. If the United States keeps on staying out of it, some countries will jump in on the Bitcoin bandwagon and some just won't, and their institutions and banks would just join into the crypto sector while the government is working on CBDC, to be really honest with you. Now, Japan is what we're going to talk about next. Moving on from Bo Hennings' essentially speech, who is now also, by the way, working at Tether. He left the White House to work for Tether. I'm guessing Tether offered him a very, very big paycheck. Now, Samson Mow is what we're going to talk about next, the CEO of Jan3. Japan considers a strict Bitcoin reserve after Samson Mow meeting. Samson Mow, CEO of Jan3, met Japanese political leaders, including Satoshi Hamada and Jinki Kanda, to discuss the adoption of strict Bitcoin reserve for Japan. This meeting signifies Japan's potential move towards a government-backed Bitcoin reserve, aligning with global trends and potentially impacting Bitcoin in foreign markets. Samson Mow, CEO of Jan3, met Japanese political leaders, discussed the creating a strict Bitcoin reserve in Japan. This marks Japan's alignments with global trends, highlighting Bitcoin's significance and potential financial implications. Samson Mow, known for his strong advocacy of Bitcoin, recently met with these leaders. Advocacy for Bitcoin's economic benefits is at the forefront, essentially, of these discussions. Samson Mow is enthusiastic about Bitcoin, wants Japan to focus on Bitcoin potential in their economy. Mow stated, "We had a great discussion on the importance of Bitcoin, why the government's focus essentially should be on Bitcoin only, and the economic benefits of Bitcoin's strategy would bring to Japan. The meeting has sparked potential policy shifts within Japan, encouraging institutions towards Bitcoin. However, no official funding has been designated yet. Enthusiasm grows among cryptocurrency stakeholders. If adopted, Japan could boost global Bitcoin markets and potentially influence other countries to reassess their cryptocurrency strategies as well. Reactions in the Japanese crypto community are broadly positive. Japan's move is essentially very close to what El Salvador's been taking, the footsteps they've been taking towards a Bitcoin essentially space or Bitcoin adoption, which escalated institutional holdings. Past examples show significant economic shifts. The US has also engaged in Bitcoin reserves. Global trends suggest that adopting Bitcoin reserves may increase national holdings and stabilize economic commonly influenced by fiat currencies. Historical data supports Bitcoin price appreciation. There's one thing everybody overlooks when it comes to Bitcoin. The main thing that everybody overlooks when it comes to Bitcoin is that we still don't know who created it. I don't know why this is like such a major thing, but just gets overlooked. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who created Bitcoin. Not knowing what that person's or what that government or what that entity or what that group's intentions are with Bitcoin in the future, it's crazy to overlook something like that and just go, who cares who created Bitcoin? Even though the person that created Bitcoin pretty much has a humongous wallet that, if ever dumped on the market space, any point of time could crash certain companies or crash certain economies, depending on how far deep institutions are inside of Bitcoin as years to come. But apparently that doesn't matter and it gets overlooked like this. It's not a big deal. It's not a big issue. Who cares who created it or what their intentions are, even if it is to crash the global economy somewhere down the road? Not saying it's going to happen or is guaranteed to happen in any sort of a way, but it's an outcome to consider, because it would be stupid not to consider it as an outcome. Not the outcome, but it's an outcome to consider down the road. That maybe it's better to diversify than be so focused on that one particular asset, which you don't know what the creators essentially intentions are. Now, moving away from Japan to CFTC. CFTC is replacing its old 1990s surveillance system with the Nasdaq Advanced Technology. Why is this interesting? Because this could be the first steps of first fixing the structure of the Nasdaq and second tokenization. The US Commodities Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, is making a big move towards modernizing essentially its market surveillance. The regulator has joined forces with the Nasdaq to implement the latter's market surveillance solution, which several exchanges and regulators across the globe already use. For the CFTC, the shift is also a turning point. Its current surveillance system dates back to the 1990s and was intended for a far different trading essentially stage. Today's markets are faster, more global, and vastly more complex, with crypto assets and prediction markets in the mix. Regulators essentially say the old tools are no match for new challenges. Using Nasdaq technology, the CFTC hopes to essentially plug holes in fraud detection and monitor the market. The platform also offers an auto alerts, cross-market analytics, and real-time visibility in trading activity. This will allow investigators to identify suspicious activity sooner, to take action more quickly, and to better protect US market and investors from manipulation and abuse. It's interesting that the last time the Nasdaq was, essentially had some sort of a security feature by the CFTC to protect people from manipulation of the stock market was 1990. 1990 was when the Nasdaq essentially was introduced the idea of how to stop manipulation. You fast forward from 1990 to 2025, it took them that much time to come to the conclusion of maybe we should start looking into fraud in the stock market and creating a better infrastructure to detect manipulation and fraud when it comes to stocks. 1990 to 2025. So imagine the amount of manipulation and fraud that was going on between this time period, essentially. The decision also, that's why Nancy Pelosi is having an absolute field day. Nancy Pelosi's portfolio is up 54%. Nancy Pelosi's portfolio, in fact, beat the most top-of-the-range hedge funds in the United States of America. Nancy Pelosi's portfolio. She beat Wall Street. Her portfolio beat hedge funds. top of the range hedge funds. I mean, it explains why, because 1990 was when they had that security feature. This decision also comes as political and industry pressures increases on regulatory, essential regulators to bolster oversight of digital assets. This is the first step of essentially the stock market going into tokenization. First, fix the structure of the stock market. Second, introduce tokenization. Crypto markets never close and the price swings and trading volumes can shoot up within minutes. Watchdogs risk being left behind without advanced technology. Officials say the upgrade makes the CFTC a more effective enforcer of market integrity when American financial oversight has been under essentially a microscope. It is about replacing a pretty old system. A pretty old system is one way to describe it, as much as creating a regulator essentially ready for the future of finance. CFTC and Nasdaq want real-time trade surveillance across all assets, including crypto. The CFTC is working with Nasdaq, essentially allowing market surveillance information sharing with the CME group, sending direct market participant information that was kept confidential for obvious reasons. Acting chair, essentially Caroline D. Pam, said the rise of digital finance continued to influence the work of the CFTC and noted that the upgrade was vital as the agency assumed a greater role in overseeing the sector. She stressed that essentially as the market evolved, the regulator also had to evolve. According to her, the Nasdaq market surveillance would provide automated alerts and cross-market analytics, enabling the CFTC to track unusual trades and prevent manipulation and protect investors more quickly. The system, essentially, which replaces decades-old technology at the agency, allows staff to simultaneously scan trading patterns across traditional derivatives and fast-moving crypto markets. Officials say this is crucial to fostering a risk such as wash trading, price manipulation, or cross-exchange arbitrary digital assets. This is brilliant. Not only is the CFTC trying to stop manipulation or fraud inside the stock market with this new security feature, but they're also trying to add this security feature to the crypto space that we can stop bot trading, pretty much. In other words, wash trading. We can also stop essentially any sort of manipulation or arbitrary in terms of cross-arbitrary happening. The rollout is a part of a larger push for the agency for modernization to place the CFTC at a 21st century regulator. The Nasdaq is not new to market manipulation. Its monitoring technology already supports over 50 exchanges and 20 regulators globally, including Europe and Asia. In working with the CFTC, Nasdaq broadened essentially the way in which it helps police the financial web inside the United States. Its technology can monitor manipulation across asset classes, commodities, fixed income, cryptocurrencies, and predict markets. The technology provides essentially a order book data and the ability to scale during periods of high volatility. This is particularly important for crypto markets that are open 24/7 and that can move extremely fast. Tal Cohen, the president of the Nasdaq, said that today's markets require technology capable of responding quickly. He added that the Nasdaq was proud to support the CFTC in its efforts to ensure the resilience and fairness of the US markets. The agency isn't only focusing on old markets of the past, but is also preparing for the next wave of financial creativity. This is brilliant. And essentially, the CFTC is telling you the stock market is getting prepared for tokenization of going digital, in other words. Earlier this year, it introduced a crypto spirit to examine digital assets and follow recommendations from the White House report. The rise, essentially, of the round-the-clock trading, decentralized finance, and prediction markets calls for more sophisticated surveillance tools. The CFTC can gain a straightforward view across markets through the Nasdaq platform, so fraud or unusual activity in one asset class can be cross-checked with others. The CFTC is essentially essentially is updating the Nasdaq on one purpose only, because it's trying to prepare it for a digital world. Because the last time the CFTC did anything for the Nasdaq, essentially on protecting and stopping manipulation and fraud, was 1990. If fast forward to 2025, when they're saying, okay, now we need to create some sort of surveillance, stop manipulation, stop essentially scams inside the crypto space, stop any sort of abuse on the market space, and make sure it's fair for everyone to trade on. And that tokenization is next. This is incredible. Things are actually moving fast. It might not seem like it, but they are. Now, before we go through the next news on tonight's live, which is regarding MasterCard, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you have any questions or comments, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's see where we were at. Is it time to sell my BTC miles? Not financial advice. No. Depends. Up to you. Your money, your choice. Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Pelosi, criminal intent. Yep, facts. Hi, Miles. Why crypto keep dumping and no boron? Crypto is not keep dumping. If you see where the prices were before compared to what they are now, we're still pretty damn high. And we're not that far off, Johnny. So why still no sign of change of boron? Is it still cheap to buy some cryptos? And is 2,000 XRP enough for being safe in the Antichrist? 2,000 XRP is a credible amount to have, believe it or not. Along the way, obviously, if you want to add more to it, again, your choice, not financial advice at all. Yes, some crypto projects are still cheap for what they're going to become. Yes, I agree. Now, MasterCard and Circle to enable USDC and EuroC settlements. So a few days ago, we had Gemini, MasterCard, and XRP. Today, we have MasterCard, Circle, and USDC. MasterCard, an American payment service provider, is expanding its partnerships with Circle, the company behind the popular USDC stablecoin. Together, they aim to simplify the process for businesses in essentially Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa to settle payments using USDC and EuroC. Notably, this step aims to modernize cross-border payment methods and encourage the use of digital currencies in global trade. Additionally, payment processors will be able to pay merchants with digital currencies, making transactions faster, more transparent, and cheaper compared to traditional money systems. The initiative will first benefit Arab Financial Services, AFC, such as AFS, and Easy Financial Services. These early adopters will use Circle's digital dollars and euros to make their settlement process faster and improve cash management. Importantly, this move aligns with MasterCard's efforts to include essentially blockchain and digital assets into its global payment network. The EEMEA region essentially is experiencing growth in digital payments, making it a great place for blockchain-based financial solutions by utilizing stablecoin settlements. MasterCard and Circle aims to accelerate this digital shift. In May, MasterCard patented with MoonPay to facilitate stablecoin payments globally. Interestingly, this is a part of MasterCard's strong essentially strategy to deepen its roots in the essentially crypto space. From the outset, the card manufacturer has been quite clear about its intentions to establish an undeniable essentially presence in the digital asset ecosystem. As such, this new blockchain-based protocols focuses group is retail and institutional users. MasterCard plans to leverage MoonPay's Ion technology, allowing effective and efficient relays essentially integrations to achieve fast crypto payments. The initiative will essentially simplify on-ramp and off-ramp payments similar to Venmo and Zelle systems. And further, the partnership provides every crypto wallet instant access to virtual MasterCards for stablecoin powered essentially transactions. MoonPay is a great company, to be fairly honest. Recently, Circle introduced their Circle Arc as well in the Q2 earnings reports. It shows that this new layer 1 blockchain designed for stablecoin payments, currency exchanges, and other financial market use cases. As reported, the Arc blockchain network aims to create faster, more secure, and enterprise-grade payment solutions also. So, a few days ago, we had essentially MasterCard, Gemini, and XRP. Today, we have Circle, USDC, and MasterCard. Now, on the topic of XRP, or Ripple in this sense, we're going to move on to the Ripple segment of tonight's live, XRP Ripple segment, which is this one. So, Ripple and Circle are pretty much essentially have come together. Ripple and Circle have come together, you could say, in a way maybe, backing a cross-border payments platform, TazaPay. A Singaporean-based crypto cross-border payments infrastructure platform, TazaPay closed a Series B funding round. The round was led by Peak XV partners and included participation from digital asset giants like Ripple and Circle. According to essentially the press release today, the company plans to use the financing to help speed its licensing roadmap in a key global markets, including the United States, Australia, Hong Kong, and the United Arab Emirates. They said, we're entering the next chapter of our journey, one where modern payment technologies, regulatory compliance, and partnerships with global leaders will enable the future of cross-border commerce. TazaPay's co-founder and CEO Raul said in the release, with this round, we are not just capitalizing the business. We are investing in our long-term vision to become the builder of a global payment collection and payment infrastructure built on modern relays. One of the key use cases this infrastructure essentially serves is being the fiat bridge for stablecoins in emerging markets. The investment from Circle and Ripple, both key players in blockchain-based, essentially, and stablecoin-powered payment infrastructure space, underline TazzaPay's role in connecting traditional finance with the evolving world of digital currencies. The release essentially said the company now has one of the broadest, essentially, fiat collection networks in emerging markets. The future of global payments depends on the seamless convergence of traditional and digital finance. Eric, Senior Vice President for Corporate and Business Developments at Ripple, said in the release, TazzaPay is a clear leader in building these essential, compliant, last-mile connections, especially in emerging markets. Interesting use of words, last mile, in terms of connection for the digital payments world. Stablecoins essentially are reshaping the cross-border payment space. For much of the past decade, cryptocurrency and traditional finance operated in parallel, payments wrote to this month. Stablecoins, essentially blockchain-based tokens, are pegged to fiat currencies, emerging cryptocurrencies markets as a tool for liquidity and arbitrary. At the same time, banks and payment networks continue investing in modernizing legacy relays with limited overlap between the two essentially spheres. The separation is now collapsing. Cross-border payments make up a sprawling and essentially inefficient market space, with the bulk of transactions consisting on B2B transactions, the report said. The efficiencies in this system include settlement times that can stretch over multiple days, high fees, and a lack of transparency and strong resilience on intermediaries. Stablecoins provide a technical alternative that can address these pain points. They offer instant transaction settlements, lower cost, programmable transfers, and global accessibility. Circle and Ripple are behind this company, a Singaporean company by the name of TazzaPay. Circle and Ripple have both helped it raise a Series B funding round for their startup. Because even according to Ripple and Circle, that this company is going to be doing something revolutionary inside the payment sector, and Ripple and Circle both want to be part of that. So if you do want to go check it out, TazzaPay, one day if they do release their own some sort of infrastructure blockchain token, you can know now. If they do, they haven't, just so you know. But if they do, just keep it on your books. It might be worth looking into, in other words, later on. Now, sticking on Ripple, Coinbase, Kraken have joined over 100 firms. Why has Ripple, Coinbase, Kraken, and another 100 firms inside the blockchain sector, inside the fintech sector, come together? Because the banks have come together to slow down progress in fintechs by using and weaponizing banking associations to send letters to the OCC, or by brokers all coming together because they hate tokenization that's going to take money away from them, by sending letters to the SEC to close certain loopholes for tokenization, or by banks sending letters to the SEC telling them that they should be not letting a regular person earn yield on their stablecoins. So you can pretty much say that companies, fintech companies, have all come together because they're fed up. They're fed up with the banks, with essentially banking associations, with the brokers, all coming together and sending letters to the OCC or the SEC to slow down fintech progress. So fintech firms have all come together. Ripple, along with more than 100 crypto companies and tech advocacy groups, has formed a coalition to urge the Senate Banking Committee to include explicit protections for software developers in the upcoming market structure legislation or risk opposition. This is brilliant to see. Honestly, Ripple and 100 other crypto companies working together for the future of the United States is incredible to watch. The group has sent a letter with over 114 signatories, including Anderson Howard's, Coinbase, Grayscale, Kraken, Ripple, Paragon, Solano Labs, Uniswap. The list just goes on of the amount of fintech companies that have signed this letter that's been sent off. The main points put forward by the crypto firms include: the coalition warns that the US risks losing its edge in blockchain innovation if it doesn't get its act together. The share of open source developers in the US has dropped from 25% in 2021 to 18% in 2025. This decline is largely attributed to the ongoing regulatory uncertainties, because the CFTC and the SEC still need to move faster than they are right now. The effort is led by the DeFi, essentially Education Fund, and the Chamber of Progress, a large tech lobbying organization reportedly funded in part by Amazon, Apple, Google, and even Uber are involved in essentially in this part. We speak to Congress with one voice. 100 tech firms, 100 crypto firms. This is what their letter says. We speak to Congress with one voice. Provide robust nationwide protections for software developers and non-custodial service providers in market structure legislations, the letter said. Without such protections, we cannot support a market structure bill. A source familiar with the effort stated that the letter was prompted by concerns, and some Senate Democrats may attempt to include language that holds developers criminally liable if their code is used for money laundering or evasion sanctions. The source added that keeping essentially this from happening is an issue that fully unites the industry. Just because somebody creates a line of code and somebody uses it for the wrong purpose, it doesn't mean that person should be penalized up to a certain extent. The House passed the Clarity Act and other laws such as Keep Your Coins Act were praised for protecting essentially decentralized finance and peer-to-peer transactions. However, the group said further clarification is still needed. They want clear federal protections that override state laws and ensure that developers can't be wrongly labeled as money transmitters or risk essentially prosecution under laws of 18 U.S. Code 1960. Still, it is advised that the Senate to take further action by clearly protecting developers from criminal essential punishment, stating that this could hinder innovation in the field. The initiative is one of the most concrete, essentially, lobbying efforts by crypto and tech groups to date, without a doubt. 100 crypto firms coming together has never been seen before, demonstrating how market structure legislation is becoming a major policy battleground. Now that crypto firms have a much more bigger grip on the market space and in terms of politicians, it's great to see that they're all coming together to use their abilities, their powers, and their control and their money to bring more innovation inside the United States. Because yes, the SEC is moving slow. They could have approved certain ETFs a while ago, which they still haven't. Yet you could say maybe they're waiting for the end of September for the Clarity Act to get that full green light before the SEC moves forward. But I agree 100%. All of these 100 firms coming together, incredible to watch. Ripple included also as one of the main big players on this, with Coinbase alongside it. And also the other companies that are in some sort of way involved in this. Amazon, Apple, Google, Uber, they're also involved in this some sort of a way. All coming together as fintech companies to protect fintech laws, essentially, and developers. Brilliant to watch. On that note, of all these companies essentially coming together, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. These companies are only coming together to protect your rights inside the digital space, to bring innovation back to the United States, which brings liquidity back to the United States, a lot more liquidity, which also essentially leads up to utility. On that note, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. This was episode 362 of the CMF Live, if I'm not mistaken. Episode 362 of the CMF Live. We are 3 episodes away from 365 episodes, which is incredible. The CMF Live stands for Crypto Mouse Family. If you're watching this for the first time ever, my name is Mouse. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world, completely transformed into digital space. And today we talked about some international news of what's happening around the world in terms of Hong Kong, essentially some other countries. We talked about Ripple news, talked about how crypto firms are coming together. We talked about the Fed. We talked about the European market space. We talked about essentially Trump in terms of that matter as well. A lot of news we covered on tonight's live, as always, as we do. Tune into tomorrow's live, which is episode 363 of the CMF Live. And a disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. So, if you're watching this for the first time, this was called the CMF Live, stands for Crypto Mouse Family. If you've liked and retweeted this live and put a comment outside of X, thank you so much. If you also like this live and you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much as well. If you haven't liked or retweeted this live, please like and please retweet this live, CMF members. It means a lot to me when everybody tunes in from the CMF and everybody likes and everybody retweets. It genuinely means a lot to me when I see people from the CMF like and retweet the lives. So honestly, thank you so much to every single CMF member who always straight away likes and retweets the live if they're watching on X, and to everyone on YouTube who straight away likes the live as well when it starts off. So thank you so much to everyone for that. I will see everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual, 10 p.m. London time onwards. Before we do go, let's go start the comment section first, so we don't miss out on anything. Thanks. Hello, we were here. Night, Miles and CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thanks, Miles. Have a great night and see you tomorrow, same time. Artistic, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Thanks, Miles. These amazing news about Ripple. Thanks for your hard work. Good night, brother. Well done. Carl, let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Good night, Miles and CMF. Thank you so much. Let's go, Mike. See you tomorrow, about the same time as usual. Take care, Miles and CMF. Ray, see you tomorrow, about the same time as usual. Interesting again. Thanks as always. Let's go, D. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Miles, when is the license likely to be approved for Ripple's bank license? We should get an update essentially within a few months. Another great job, Miles. Let's go, Scott. See you tomorrow, same time as usual, brother. Good night, Miles and family. Great live. Many thanks. All see you tomorrow. Ian, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. Good night, Miles and CMF family. Funky brother. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Thanks, Miles, for another informative evening. See you tomorrow, mate. Addy, see you tomorrow, same time as usual. See you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Let's go, Funky brother. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Good stuff, as always, Miles. Thank you so much. Let's go, Semper. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Night, all. Keep well, Susie. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Miles, what about Link, Hot, Beam, and ACH? Link, good. Hot, good. Beam, good. ACH, also good. In their own aspects and their own fields, they're all good. Thanks for great news, Miles. And night, Miles and CMF. Jason, let's go. See you tomorrow. Obviously, no financial advice, Scott. Excellent, Miles. Keep up the great work. Let's go, Scott. Thanks for always being prepared. Let's go, Scott. And good night. Let's go, Scott. See you tomorrow, but at the same time as usual. Thank you for your time, Miles, providing the updates in the crypto space. We appreciate the work you put for the live, and as always, your insights. Let's go, CMF. Shelly, thank you so much for the kind words, and I will see you tomorrow as well, same timing as usual. I will see everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual, at 10 p.m. London time for episode 363 of the CMF Live. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Love you all. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you're around the world. Like, retweet, follow, comment, subscribe if you already haven't. If you have, thank you so much. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual.